Hello, and welcome to WANA Pod by WANA Learning, the podcast where we explore innovative ways to learn, grow, and stay successful in our ever-evolving world. I'm your host, Nisa Burrell, and I'm thrilled to have you join me on this journey. Welcome to today's episode, where we're joined by Tunde Agoro, an inspiring leader and environmental consultant. Part 1 of this podcast was released on Earth Day, where Tunde shared his experiences and his views on sustainability to help us celebrate our planet, our power. But in this episode, we're hearing about how his experiences of immigrating to the UK and making a new life here as a black man has influenced his career, his outlook, and his values and attitude to leadership. So without further ado, we're going to dive straight back in. We've spoken a lot about sustainability and environmental issues, and I know that's something you're passionate about, but I also know you touched on it there, you're passionate about social ones too. And you're somebody that has taken a really brave step of immigrating to the UK. So I really wanted to hear some information about your journey and your settling into the UK and the impact that you found that this has had on yourself.
Coming to the UK has been life-changing for me. I know Kemi Badenoch, a conservative MP, once said that because she's from the same country as I am, she's Nigerian as well, and she immigrated some years ago. She said something about she left some place for a better culture. That went very viral. Didn't go down quite well with lots of people.
I wonder why.
Um, uh, so she's right, but she's not completely right. I think a better way to say that might have been the fact that there is no perfect culture anywhere. Um, and I think there is something to be said about the culture from the geopolitical south and the culture here in the political north, and there's things we can learn from each other. So for me, coming to the UK, I learned so much from the British culture. And one of the key things from there is a high emphasis on consideration uh, for other people. For example, how the government prioritizes looking after the vulnerable, the social welfare system, the NHS, free for all. It's incredible. It's not perfect um, science by any stretch of the imagination, but there is that core principle and value for life. And generally, people have a high level of politeness and what have you. And I learned a lot about punctuality. If someone tells you we're starting at event at 3 p.m., be rest assured it's not starting until 6 p.m. But I found it's very different here. If you arrive 15 minutes before an event, then you're on time. If you arrive at the time the event starts, you're already late. Yeah, so there's things to be said about the two cultures. The positives I haven't talked about from where I come from is mostly the communal lifestyle. But back in Nigeria, we say something like it takes a village to raise a child. I was raised by a village, literally. My parents, well, my dad is late now, but my mom, she's quite advanced in age. She's getting close to 90. All our kids are out of the country, but she's not alone. We don't need to worry about her being alone. We got aunties, uncles, cousins, we got neighbors, everybody checking in on her, alongside the paid staff that are looking after her as well. It's such a great sense of cohesion and support. I could be 10 doors down the road and my parents don't have to worry, because I'm in safe hands. There is that trust, there is, but here it's slightly more independent and isolated, hence why loneliness is a big issue. Right. So there are different things you can pull and piece apart. So I had different shocks when I moved to the UK, right? Um, but I'm grateful to come in here. I had some challenges as well, in the sense that not everybody understood where I was coming from. Not everybody understood my culture. For example, because of that communal nature, being very open and friendly with people, it was often misconstrued. Some people thought I was too friendly, and some people told my laughter was too loud, not considerate enough, of others, some people thought I was a little bit flamboyant because I was always wearing colorful stuff all over the place. you know, and at the same time also, unfortunately, I went through some um um I don't know, some bias as well. I experienced a few of that. One of the ones that stood out to me that I didn't understand was going to a bus stop once, and a lady immediately clutched her bags, and I was like, "Hey, I'm not trying to mug you,"
Mm,
and that happened to me in St. Albans, and I was like, "Wow," you know, um, but also at work. And this was very shocking. I had a colleague once, you know, talk to me during lunchtime. It was on his last day. He was leaving the company, and he said to me, he just wanted to have a chat with me, and he said this has been burning on his mind for a long, long time, but he just thinks this is a good chance for him to get it off his chest. And I was like, oh, I thought he had something really interesting what to say to me, and he was like, he just couldn't understand how someone like me from Africa has come down here and I'm managing and telling us what to do. And I was like, what? So I had experienced bits of that. I've had sadly people that I reported to that also had a bit of that undertone, come across. So I've had to work twice as hard
mm,
as everyone else to be able to prove why I should be here, and that I think is slightly unfortunate. But generally, coming to the UK has been amazing for me in terms of the education, the quality education I received, the opportunity I had to contribute to be part of meaningful change, in industry. I'm very active in the community, as we have discussed before. And this weekend, I'm going to have my induction into the police force here in Bristol. Yeah. And again, it's volunteering, but again, it's because I see a need to be a part of that. Right. I'm a director in a community center as well in Bristol. I'm a school governor as well. I don't have any kids in the school, but I just felt like, well, let's do something for the kids too, right? So community is very much at my heart, and I believe everybody has something to contribute, and it's by what we all individually supply that we are better, for it, So yeah, it's a great place, the UK. I mean, I'm really blessed to be part of the UK, but there are challenges still in terms of
mm,
diversity, inclusivity, beyond just race, beyond religion, beyond color and all that. There is disabilities and all other protected characteristics that needs to be safeguarded. And this is being threatened by things we're seeing from across the pond, in the USA. But I think the UK needs to be resolute in the values that have established, the nation as it was, which is, that core value of consideration for all lives. You know, every life matters. And that needs to be carried through. We need to take that down to every part of society, even in work, and in the professional space, and yeah, I hope to see a much more inclusive and diverse, UK workforce, that pretty much represents, what the demography is looking like for the country.
Mm. Firstly, I want to apologise that you have experienced, I know you call them biases, but racist experiences and a less than warm welcome. Some of the experiences that you shared, honestly, they leave me speechless. I just can't believe in the current world we live in, people are still leaning towards those biases, and somebody felt
Mm,
comfortable enough to voice that to you as well
yeah,
is just shocking. It's
yeah.
absolutely shocking. But I want to thank you as well for getting involved. You've mentioned so many things that you're volunteering for and that you're giving back into the community. So you've joined this country and you're really embedding yourself within it. And what I love is that I talk a lot to people about, I train people with diversity and inclusion, and we talk to people about bringing your whole self, and that is what you're doing. You understand who you are, you're comfortable with yourself, you're taking the best bits that you've brought with you from your culture and what you value, and you're trying to put that back into the home that you're making here. And I think that's really incredible, and there's a lesson that we can take from that. But
Thank
obviously
you,
the
Lisa.
challenges and the things that you have faced,
Mm,
they don't just exist for you, they exist for others.
mm,
But you take that and you bring that along with you. So,
mm.
how has that influenced or perhaps changed your approach to leadership and professional values?
Right. That's a very, very good question, Lisa. And I think one of the things I've learned is our decisions, like I said, does not end with us. It can make or break, others. It has an impact on other people. It's far lingering. It goes further than we imagine. I'll start with this little story. My first lecturing sting at the University of Bath, which is about 8 years ago, I had two students walk up to my lantern after the lecture and said, "Wow, we want to do what you do." And for me, that was amazing. The opportunity to be able to influence and inspire young engineers like that. And I got that job as a result of a recommendation from an ex-boss who provided me such positive mentoring. Even after I'd long left the business, he was interacting with the University of Bath and they were creating this new module called Modern Building Design for architecture and civil engineering students. And he said, "Oh, do you know what? There's a guy. He no longer works with us, but I think he would be great for this module." And they contacted me. And this is amazing, right? And this is just one of the few things. And I'm going to mention his name is Ant Wilson, right? He's often called Mr. Building Services. He's retired now. A phenomenal guy. While I went through all the discrimination in the office and stuff like that, you know, he was my sponsor, he was my ally.
Mm.
He supported me, encouraged me. He recognized the biases for what they were, so much so there was a point where he had to, help me get relocated to another office because of the treatment I was experiencing in one of the offices, and he ensured that I got proper relocation allowance, I got transportation. He went far and beyond. He checked in regularly. I mean, he epitomized the value when you say people are our greatest asset. So I had that example of a great leadership, someone who saw you before the numbers. It wasn't just about the numbers. It was about the individual and the person. So for me, my leadership style has been pretty much shaped by that. I see people before the results, because the people will get you the results, and when you elevate that, productivity should always come before profit. But a lot of leadership um, is so result focused that it blinds you to people, and
Mm.
you cannot deliver. in isolation. Every leader delivers through people. So why not celebrate that? I think if you can focus on that, you will naturally get the results that you're after. As much as, I like to see results, and, results is oftentimes what we just get rewarded for. Um, but I think there is a much deeper reward from actually leaving something positive in people,
Mm.
which is long lasting. I mean, I'm talking about Ant Wilson years after, my interaction with him is unforgettable. Everywhere I go, I talk about him and his legacy. He's a big community man as well, and it's influenced me to
Mm.
carry that on. And that's what I think leadership needs to be. It has to be rooted in people. It's about people, right? Not just results.
People, as you say, particularly when they start getting results focused, that might be okay on the short term, but actually it's not sustainable.
No.
And people spend the majority of their time at work. So you need to create an environment and a culture that is just better. Like no one wants to leave work upset,
Mm,
stressed. It has a huge impact on our life. And
mm.
getting that balance right is just going to make for better business. Um, so can you talk about the importance of diversity and representation in the sustainability and environmental sectors, and how will having that diverse workforce, in your opinion, improve outcomes and sustainability initiatives?
Oh yeah, I think this is very well documented. McKinsey and partners, they've done a very deep research, about this, and a lot of people quote them quite a lot in terms of the top performing FTSE companies, 250, 500 companies. They tend to be the most diverse and most inclusive, and that's simply because they are nursing the benefit of diversity. And when we talk about diversity, we're not just talking about, again, just about the protected characteristics. It's about diversity of thought, of
Mhm.
perspective, diversity of roles. Like if you have an organization, when we look at your board, who are your C-suites? Are they just the chief financial, that, the chief commercial, this, chief operating, this? What about your chief sustainability officer? Have you got that role on there? That's the kind of diversity needs to be thought about. So yeah, having that diversity of thoughts or views, roles, perspective, and individuals can only enrich a business. Because if you have the same people that look like you, talk like you, think like you, within your decision making, if you like, body or part of a business, then you're not going to get anything new. You're not going to get anything different. And we already said, earlier on, during this chat, that the thinking that brought us here is not going to get us out of here. We need a lot of innovation. And innovation is embedded within diversity, right? Because there's a freshness of perspective, there's a challenge to the box. You can think outside the box, you can break the box, and then you can implement new stuff, much better and much more wholesomely. So I think, yeah, we cannot overemphasize the importance of that. But also, as well, like I said earlier on, it's very essential that organizations, they mirror the demographic. We reflect society. I mean, when we look at businesses, particularly in the construction industry, and you're seeing the leadership comprising 99% white, male, middle class, that is not reflective of society. And when we talk about diversity, cannot be just at the entry level of organizations where they're like, oh yeah, we are 50-50 male, female, and all
Mhm.
that. And then as you go to the top, you know, it starts to look very different. You see women vanishing, for obvious reasons, women get married, they start to have children and all that, and then there is menopause and there is all sorts of things that women have to deal with. And hence why you need to support and provide, we need an equitable society, right? Those cannot be excuses, for leaving women out of the table. But actually, how do we support them, in order to be able to stay at the table and bring meaningful contribution because they have something to contribute. And the same with all marginalized part of society, right? How do you support them? How do you promote them? How do you empower them to be where they ought to be? And that's the challenge, that, the industry faces, at all of this level. You've got
Mm.
to be brave enough to say and honest enough to say, okay, fine, we're not representing society right now. We got a big issue. Let's deal with it. Don't just keep talking about it or massaging the number. Look at the data. Let it speak to you, right? And then let's be honest about the culture that we're building, and do what is right. Let's do what is right.
Brilliant. One of the things that I often say to people when I'm having discussions like this is when you're on your own, you only have the life that you have lived and your experiences to lean back on.
Mm,
If you're in a room that's had somebody that's done very similar paths to you, it's going to be
mm,
a lot of crossovers. So you're not really adding a whole amount more. So you
mm,
need people from that different perspectives to
mm,
bring all of that knowledge to you. And then suddenly
mm.
you've got access to all of that as well. So what could
Indeed.
be you stood there with one stone, now suddenly you're there with 20. And what's
Mm,
better to pull from? And a lot of the times I find with innovation, people are trying to create something when the answer's perhaps already out there, just applied differently. But you
mm,
don't know that until you connect with the right people and you give them the space to actually have their voice heard.
mm,
And I think you've touched on it, really important that
mm,
saying stuff will get you so far,
mm.
doing stuff will get you over the line.
Absolutely.
And, a lot of things that I find which people overlook is this idea of just being a mentor. And you've touched on it by talking about Out Wilson
Mm,
and the impact that's had on you. Everybody can be that person. There is such a thing
yeah.
as upward mentorship.
Mm,
There are these things there. Just take that step yourself and go, okay, do you know what? I'm an ally. I'm going to do this and reach out to somebody and just offer
mm,
them the support. Something as infrequent as a once a month coffee chat for half an hour is still better than nothing. And you start to build that two-way connection because it's not one way, it's two ways. And I think the more and more we do this, the better it's going to be.
mm.
Um, Looking back on your experiences, what moment or accomplishment has really stood out to you in your career in terms of positively shaping your future and in like advancing your passion in both sustainability and social responsibility?
I can touch on so many moments to be honest with you. Should I start with when I won a national arts competition in secondary school, inspired by my art teacher then, who just believed so much in me, and I was like, what does this guy see that I don't see? Or is it the moment I won a a zonal design competition in architecture school in my year two? And I had year four, year five, year six students from four different universities participating, and people thought, "Dude, why are you wasting your time on this? You don't stand a chance." But I won it, and it was such a moment for me in terms of, instilling a self-belief in my own ability, and or is it getting admission into Imperial College? When I did, because I applied as an architecture student to a world-renowned engineering program. To tell you what, the admission board initially rejected my admission. And I was like, why would you do that? You know, nobody says no to me. And the feedback I got was they were concerned that I was coming from a design um, discipline into an engineering. uh, modules which they thought would be very challenging because I might not have the prerequisite. And I was like, hang on a minute, you know. And I was able to present my GCSEs and some of my results transcripts from university where I did some mathematics and physics and some courses, and I had A's in them. And I was like, listen, I understand some of this stuff, right? Don't be worried about this. And the admission board reversing their decision was a massive turnaround. And they said, all right, Tunde, we'll take a chance on you. And I was the first architecture student ever, admitted on that engineering program at Imperial. Now, that was completely life-changing for me getting on that course because that was the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. That particular master's course at Imperial, and to have graduated as the star of the class again, for me, that was huge. My course director, Chris Chisman, it was so how do I say it was so complimentary. Like I said, he went out of his way to put me in front of organizations, when he didn't have to do that. Again, we're talking about the power of diversity,
Mhm.
right? This is something Imperial hadn't done before, bringing somebody from such a different background into an engineering program. We were in different project teams, and Chris Cheeseman saw my contributions throughout all of this. I was like, I brought a completely different view to all of the engineering task because I saw it from a very different view, and it's brought such enrichment to the outputs, which he could not even deny it. And again, I think the opportunity to be in a very different place to bring what I carry, from my years of experience, to play, in such a meaningful way, an interesting way, was so great. Because I see things in a different light. I'm able to see big picture. I'm able to also go into the detail. That's what architecture trains you for. It trains you to look at the nitty-gritty details. I remember my first year in architectural practice, I was designing luxury apartments, and the bathrooms. I had to draw the tiles individually in AutoCAD with the grouts and all that. All of these things have been automated now, but back then I had to draw them individually. They had to line, they had to match, the detail was incredible, in terms of the construction drawings as well, and what have you. But at the same time, I also had to look at the bigger picture of how all the mechanical, electrical system, the structural bits integrates and fits. That training, has made my mind to think in a certain way. I'm always zooming in and I'm zooming out. I take a balcony view and then I immerse myself again back. I know everybody has this training. I've had this training from uni. I've had the experience at work because I did practice architecture for like 4 years or so. And then coming into any place, I come with that thinking. And I think, yeah, for me, that was the moment coming into Imperial to do something so vastly challenging and bringing such a fresh perspective that not only influenced my directors, but even my course mates, because my presentation style was very different. I won best um, poster design as well at the end of my, because the way I presented my topics on my poster design was so different from everybody else, and again, they all learned a lot from this.
Mm.
They all talked about the way I pick a subject and then I pull it together and I can, put it in such a visual context, that is compelling, and I think there was a bit of cross-pollination there, because people still came back to me and said, "Oh, Tunde, I learned so much from you, seeing how you did this and you did that and you pulled us together and your energy and passion and and yeah, I think that was the turning point for me."
you've had a huge impact in industry and society and everything you're bringing to the table. But if you hadn't have been given that chance initially, we would
Mm,
have lost out on all of that as an industry.
mm,
So actually by them changing their mind, by giving you that
yeah.
chance and setting that precedent for others in the future,
Mm.
I think that is going to have just a better impact long term. Somebody else that studied architecture. It's amazing, isn't it? Just
It
problem
is.
solving skills that you
Oh
learn
yeah.
and how
Oh yeah.
transferable they are.
Mm,
When I was at an engineering practice, I used to talk to people about the benefit of the fact we used to present our work once a week and it's our designs.
mm,
And not only are you trying to sell essentially what would be a drawing for a lot of money,
mm.
what you're actually trying to do there is explain the journey people will be going on, how they will be using that space, what it will be like as a physical
Correct.
asset,
Correct.
through to we're getting our work critiqued with somebody coming up in a red pen and drawing something that you might have spent 12 hours doing, but you
Mm,
can't get attached to it, and that you have to
correct.
learn resilience and how to take
Oh,
that
so
critique.
invaluable to
It's
handle
amazing, isn't it?
criticism. Yeah, critic sections. Oh, you dread
That's
them,
pulled
don't
you
you?
back, hasn't it? I was going to say it's when you start getting that sort of like, oh God, yeah, I remember those. So
Yeah.
as a final thought before we close, do you have any other thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners?
Oh, Nissa, first of all, thank you so much for this, and thank you to everyone who's listening as well and has bothered to listen to me rant for the last odd hour or so. Um, Look, we are talking about Earth Day right now, right? And again, back to the theme, it's our planet, right? Our power, and our people. I think, look, let's embrace this great beautiful blue ball in our galaxy, and just love it and cherish it and sustain it. I think for lots of people that are still wondering, where do I start? What do I really do? Look, I think one of the first things you could do is understanding your own footprint. How much impact do I really have? There's no exact science to it, but the WWF have a very simple carbon footprint calculator that you could just go onto in a few minutes. Look at your lifestyle in terms of where you get your food from, how you move from A to B, your holidays, how you power your house, your flat, where you live, and he would very quickly give you a number, which is figurative, right? It's a ballpark figure. And having an awareness of what that is, and then it gives you an idea of the four areas where you might want to focus on going forward. Is it in your food? Is that where you need to make a lifestyle change? Is it in your commute? Is it in how you manage energy at home, or otherwise? I think it's a good place to start. And if you do own your own property, consider, getting a solar panel or a solar hot water system on there. There are lots of free ways of doing this. There are companies that'll do it for you for free, but beware of scammers as well.
Mm.
But there, go to your local authorities. IKEA is a good place to also go to, if you can, and but do something. There's something so beautiful about being a part of meaningful change, rather than being on the sidelines, and just watching. Join some communities as well, where you see people are doing, something environmentally sustainability, initiative, in your community. It's be part of the change, and it's our story. It's our planet. Yeah, there is no planet B. So let's love and cherish this one.
Love that. Thank you so much, Tunde, for sharing your knowledge, your experiences, and your passion with us. It's clear that it can't just be about policy and
No,
talk. It's got to be about people doing things, taking action, taking leadership, and actually really driving to make that difference. And back to that, be the difference you want to see, quote line. Um,
100%.
but that's it for today's episode. So thank you so much. And if people want to get in touch with you, Tunde, how best they do that?
Well, I think the easiest way to reach me is perhaps by my LinkedIn, right? I'm putting together a new website as well. I will put that on my LinkedIn too, so you'll be able to reach me. Watch the space. Hopefully, that will be launched in a week or so. Excited.
Exciting.
Very excited. But yeah, look for me on LinkedIn. It's Tunde Agoro. And then I have my suffix CEMV, Chartered Environmentalist. But yeah, look forward to connecting and collaborating with everyone.
Thank you so much, Tunde.
Thank you, Nisa. It's been a pleasure.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of WANAPod by WANA Learning. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review and share with your friends. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram or TikTok for more content. Until next time, keep learning and remember, if you follow your passion, you'll be surprised where you can end up. I'm Lisa Burrell and this is WANAPod by WANA Learning. See you next time.